Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Game Over Ottawa. Unfortunately, another loss to discuss here tonight as the Sens fall 3-2, or not 3-2, they got an empty netter, 4-2 to the New York Islanders. It was worse than I remembered. Just forgot about the empty netter already. So you can tell that I am in the zone already here tonight. Maude here once again, joined by Damian Smith. How you doing tonight, Damian?
Not good again.
Yeah, after that
Uh,
one, after how that went.
it's just I don't know what to say because this is all too familiar every single season, right? And of course, we're all scarred, like every single Sens fan is out there. The moment we lose a game, we're like, "Oh, here we go again. It's November." Um, but if you lose back to back against Buffalo and New York and against the Islanders, the Islanders at home, then you deserve like the fans deserve to be scared here.
Yeah, especially because we had some pretty good games that we ended up losing against top teams in the league, but then we've had multiple games in a row here where we've lost to teams that were already behind us in the standings and are now catching up to us. So, I remember November 1st, the last show I did before we had played Buffalo, we were like, "Oh yeah, we're Buffalo's off to a bad start. We're doing so much better than them," and they've probably caught up to us at this point. They
Mhm.
blew out the Rangers tonight, so it's like all of a sudden the Sens are just not really looking any better than most of the other teams in the East. And it's tough too. It feels like it's going to be November deja vu again. Also, on that last show that I did, I was giving the November records for the Sens over the past 5 years, and now we are 1-3 in November. So when the Sens were 5-4, we were saying, hey, this is the fastest they've gotten to 5 wins in quite a while, and a 1-3 stretch later, and then suddenly things look just like it's going to be another crappy November.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Here's the one thing that I will say. This is the first stretch of like bad games this team has had in this season. Like you could point to the Colorado and Vegas game, but they played really well in Vegas. Colorado actually they didn't play well there, but that was only one game, right? So we've lost two games in a row, and I know we're 6-7. It's the first time this year that we're actually below 500. So the sky is falling, like we said. I feel like a couple of times so far this year. It's like the second the Sens get a loss, unless it's a game like against the Rangers on the road. Remember that one? Of course, that was a great one. They played fantastic. They just got goalied again. Um, but now there's cause for concern, right? Because you're starting to see the frustration seep into the players. And we are 13 games in the season, right? You heard even Gordon Miller said on the broadcast, there were a lot of doors slamming tonight.
And that was when it
And
was 0-0. That was before
yeah,
it even went to
yeah.
shit too.
Mhm.
So yeah, frustration.
Yeah, you got to wonder like what's going on in their head right now, because we can sit here as fans and like just react to what we are doing. Like we're literally doing that right now, right? But it's up to the players, and they're the leaders for the Ottawa community and for the Ottawa sports community. Because we don't have an NFL team, we don't have an NBA team, we don't have an MLB team. This is the team that we have, and unfortunately, when you have a team that has been losing this many years now, all that pressure goes on to the players, but it's up to them, right? It's up to them to scrape out those extra points and win the games, and they're not doing that as much as I would have hoped.
Yeah, you are right that it's probably the first two back-to-back bad games overall for the Sens. Because yeah, even though they've been win one, lose one, a lot of the losses they were pretty good in, and it wasn't necessarily just like these last two games we've seen where they just deserved to lose. So you'd like to hope, if you're going to be optimistic, that they won't let this stretch go on too long and they'll be able to bounce back, especially. We'll get into this later, but the next two opponents being huge divisional games against Boston and Toronto, that's going to make it really tough. But hey, the Sens have usually gotten up for games against big opponents this year, so at least that's a little bit of hope. But yeah, against teams like the Islanders, teams like the Sabres, they just don't seem to have the full 60-minute effort though. Like the Sabres game, the first two periods really weren't that bad. They're down 2-1 at the end of the second, and if I remember correctly, the shot count was like pretty close. It felt like a game that could have gone either way in the third period, and this game too. 2-0 at the end of the second, and it's like, okay, well, if we can finally just get one past Varlamov, maybe we can get some momentum, and we'll actually have a chance here. But just again, the inability to play a full 60 minutes in that Buffalo game, it fell apart in the third. In this game, we pulled it back a bit in the third, but before that, early in the game, it just wasn't enough from the Sens. They didn't get started until really late. It was kind of like that Colorado game that you and I did the post game show for, where they didn't get any goals until the last 10 minutes, and all of a sudden it's a bit of like a flurry in the offensive zone. But you can't reliably win like that. It's tough to come from
No.
behind in this NHL.
No, right? Because Nick Jensen scored with, I think it was 11 minutes left in the game. And then the crowd started getting into it. And I don't blame them for being silent the entire game. It didn't seem like there was a big crowd tonight whatsoever. Maybe like 16,000 or something. I know it's the Islanders and it's a Thursday. So, like, there's probably a reason to that. But if you're the Ottawa Senators, if you've got a lot of pressure on you right now, you would hope they would use that adrenaline to, fight it and try to win the game internally, sort of thing. Like come together as a team and work together. And they didn't do that for the first 50 minutes of the game, right? Like, I don't know if like the Islanders just got in their head or something. Like, we know the Islanders play a good defensive team, but we saw when the Sens picked up the pace, they could get past them, right? This isn't the 90s Devils here. Of course, Varlamov played great, and there was some great chances towards the end, but it's really annoying when 83% of the game your team is not playing well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's the full 60 minutes, and they haven't done that. I mean, they haven't done that since the Seattle game, and this is a really tough transition, at least for me as a fan, because on Saturday, they played the best game of their season against the Seattle Kraken, in my opinion. I know they didn't win 8-1 like against the Blues, but they shut them out. Forsberg played great, and they played great defensively. And they even had some injuries that night. And then they throw up a stinker against Buffalo. And then this game, which is just another frustrating one where they go down early because of their bad play at the start of the game, and then they're playing catch up. And we know this team has not had the ability to tie the game up late. We know that. There's a reason why they've had very little overtime losses over the years, and that's because they can't score late, like, no matter what.
I think when this team has the goalie pulled trying to tie a game is honestly the most like depressing for me as a fan. I almost like it almost feels like the game is over even before they even pull the goalie, because you just assume they're not going to tie this game with the goalie pulled, because it's been so rare for it to happen at all in the last few seasons. Like, that was a major thing under DJ Smith. They almost never tied the game with the goalie pulled, and I don't think they've done it yet this season either. A couple of goals with the empty net, but not ones that tied the game, right?
Mm-hmm. No, like they're not a team that allows a lot of goals when they're like 5-on-6 when the other team has their goalie pulled. Like, I don't think they choke or whatever you want to call it in those moments, but when it comes to scoring a goal to tie it up, they can't do it. I don't know what it is, and that's where you start to like bring it up, right? Because you're sending out the same 6 players pretty much every single time. You're sending out Giroux, Stützle, Norris, Batherson, Kachuk, and then either one of Chabot or Sanderson. And you got to wonder, because they've seen the headlines. They know the trends throughout the years. They know that the Ottawa Senators have not made the playoffs that much. You got to wonder, it's like, do they have that confidence to score the goal in the dying minutes, right? Like, they're not kids anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't use moral victories anymore. Like, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
I feel like it has to be a mental thing too, because we've seen this team be really solid on the power play so far this season. And even though it's not the exact same thing, the 6-on-5 is still a man advantage. So, like, I don't know if it's just that much harder to get pucks through when the other team still has 5 guys on the ice. Maybe the extra man doesn't have as much of an effect as when it's 5-on-4 or something like that. But yeah, you would think that it's got to be a mental thing.
Yeah. Teams are good defensively, but they're not that good defensively at this point of the season. Like, I get it if you're in the Stanley Cup Finals, like, getting a tying goal in the last minute is going to be basically impossible, because you're just used to defending as a team at that point, and you're deep into the season, and like, defense is the way to go about it, right? Because defense wins championships. But like, 15 games in the year, teams are still figuring it out. There's ways to get through, and when you're playing the Islanders, which are the definition of mid, and I'm not saying that as an insult, because I know my team is not good right now. they're like, that's what they are though, right? There's potential to get through them. We're not playing who's the top team in the league right now? It's like Vegas
I think
or
Winnipeg.
something.
Winnipeg's only got
Yeah,
one
oh yeah,
loss.
Winnipeg. Yeah, we're not going to tie it up against Winnipeg, but we could tie it up against the Islanders, but they just don't do it.
The other
Right?
frustrating thing for me about the Islanders tonight is that they're missing half of their decor. I think it
Yeah.
was Grant Hutton, Dennis Cholowski, and
Isaiah
the guy named
George.
George. Yes, Isaiah George, who are all not NHL regulars at this moment. And like props to them, those guys all did great tonight. But when you're up against that inexperienced of a decor, it's frustrating to see the team. With 0 goals until the last 10
Yeah.
minutes of the game, especially since as Sens fans we're always bothered by the lack of defensive depth, and we get one defenseman injured and suddenly it's a shit show on D, and then you have the Islanders out here with 3 regulars injured, and I think they were missing Matthew Barzal tonight too. So they were hurting a lot, and they were still able to beat us and be in control for most of the game.
Yeah, like, but you saw that we could get through to them, right? You saw that on the Batherson goal, like Grant Hutton, who's apparently 29. I didn't realize that. Like, he's a call up. He's probably their like ninth defenseman on the depth chart or something like that, maybe even 10th. And you saw Batherson get a clear lane to the net. And it's just so frustrating because you look at the rest of the start of the game, they could have easily gotten through those players, but um I don't want to say they like took it for granted because they did get chances, but it seemed like they were sort of in their own head. And every time they wouldn't score, they would slam the boards. And it's just annoying watching as a fan because you want to see them dig in more, right? And I'll give credit to the fourth line. They kept going. And there's a reason why Travis Green is using this fourth line. Um, a little bit more. I don't know how much they played tonight. And of course they probably played less as the third period went on. But like there's a reason why he's throwing out Adam Gaudette out there on the power play. And I actually sort of or sorry, not the power play, the last minute of the game, right? Remember they subbed off Batherson? It's because he's one of the guys that's digging in,
Mm-hmm.
like, and keeps fighting and not letting the frustration get to him. Because you can't be frustrated this early on in the season. I get like we're under 500, but we're not like 2 and we're not 2 and 11 or something like that, right? We're 6 and 7. Yes, it's not good whatsoever, but like it's a 2-game losing streak. You're not in a 10-game losing streak or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Hopefully I'm cheering some people up, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
like on one hand, it's encouraging that it's only 1 game below 500 and
Hmm.
they could turn it around quickly. But then on the other hand, it's like, oh, we're doing this again. It reminds me exactly of last year, if I remember correctly. I might have it a little bit off, but before the Sens went to Sweden, they were 6 and 7. They won those 2 games, went above 500. We had some optimism, and then it all came crashing down after that. And funny enough, I think the first game back from Sweden was a home ice loss against the Islanders. So like November home game against the Islanders, I'm getting some deja vu here to last year, just around the time that things went crashing down for the Sens. So it's tough. I'm torn between a bit of optimism and a bit of pessimism. Definitely
Hmm.
pessimistic tonight, but it's not. Yeah, it's not the worst so far.
No, it's not. But uh, like these games against Boston, Toronto, if you want to win back the fan base, you got to get 3 out of 4 points. You have to.
For sure.
Because like you can't make your fan base tune out this early, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I know people said, "Oh, we just want to be in the mix," but it's like, what is the mix, right? I would say we're in the mix right now because we're not off to a Nashville start or a San Jose start. So we're around there, right? But I think it's just frustrating because we as the fans look at this team and we know they can do better. We know they can do better. We know they have the pieces. It's just I think it's the mental block. I think it's the mental block. And Travis Green has to get through these guys. Or else changes are going to have to be made, but that is a conversation for a different day.
Definitely. And yeah, I think the other thing that really bothered me about tonight's loss was going into this game, the Islanders had the 30th ranked penalty kill and also the 20th ranked power play. And I believe their offense is like basically dead last in the whole league. So
Yeah.
you let them get 3 by you plus an empty net. And their power play didn't strike, at least it was 3 5-on-5 goals. But specifically the fact that their penalty kill is so bad, I expected more out of the Sens power play tonight. They did get the power play goal late in the third period, but I think it was 2 power play chances they had in the first period where they really just didn't get anything
No.
going. That's where you should have been able to break this game open and get ahead on the Islanders, because that's their weakness right there, is the penalty kill. And as we were saying, like it felt like it took a while for the team to wake up. And I feel like the fact that they didn't get any power plays in the second period was a bit tough, because I do think the second period was mostly good until the Islanders scored. Like the first 15 minutes or so of the second period, we were carrying play and we had a long run of shots where I think we were being outshot 12-7 and we flipped it on them to like 16-13, something like that. We got ahead of them.
Yeah.
I feel like if we had a power play during that stretch of the game, that could have been huge. But just overall, the special teams, I think, are probably the main reason why I think we lost tonight. They didn't get going until late in the game. The Islanders being so weak on special teams, you can't let them just like dummy you 5-on-5 with we got outscored, what, if you don't count the empty net, I think 3-1 at 5-on-5, the Jensen goal being 5-on-5 for us. So it was just,
Yeah.
I would have liked to see more from the Sens special teams tonight, specifically the power play.
Yeah, the power play, you got to wonder if a shakeup's coming. However, they're probably still in the top 10 for their power play right now,
That's
just
the thing
based
that's
off of their
tough.
hot start.
Yeah, just because of the hot start, it's like, oh, the percentage is so good. The Sens
Mhm.
power play is great, but I feel like the last few games, it's been in a lull. I think when we scored in the third period, it was the first power play goal since the St. Louis game and that big blowout. So
Yeah.
it was a bit of a drought there for sure.
Yeah, and it's not like, oh, the other teams are playing that good defensively on the PK. Like, I think it's more of I've seen some issues with them really like transitioning the puck in. Like the teams seem to be locking them down a little bit, but they have so much firepower, especially on the first power play, right? Like the second one, I expect them, sure, maybe not to get a whole lot done, but that whole first unit has played together so much throughout the years. And you've seen the top power plays in the league over the years. They've seen the reason why they've been so good, these top power plays, like the Washingtons with the Backstrom and OV, like back in those days, or Tampa Bay with, you have Kucherov, Hedman, and Stamkos at the point, is because you have like all those 5 guys on the unit. They know where they're going to be on the ice, right? And they've done that formation for so many years with the Kachuk at the goal line. You got Norris on the right side, Batherson in the slot, Stutz on the left, and you got Sanderson at the point. That's the unit that's been there for like so long. I know Sanderson just got put onto that first unit, but I don't think that should throw it off that much. Those players should know each other's tendencies by now, because this first unit goes back to basically the 21-22 season when Josh Norris scored 35 goals, right? So this should be a top 10 power play going forward. I don't think they should shake it up. I think they should just continue rolling with it until, we'll get to the Lions 5-on-5 a little bit later, but the power play, I think maybe we could keep it as is for just now, at least.
I think that makes sense. Speaking of Josh Norris, though, I do wonder if they should try to be getting him that one-timer look more frequently than they have been. Like, I thought we would be seeing it a lot more often this season now that he seems to be fully healthy, and to be honest, he's been playing pretty well overall, but they haven't been going back to that play at all, which is strange to me. I wonder maybe if it's a shoulder thing. Maybe he doesn't want to be cranking too many one-timers because his shoulder isn't like quite used to doing it again after being injured for so long. But if I mostly agree that they don't need to change too much on the power play, but I do kind of want to see Norris ripping some bombs again, I have to say.
You gotta wonder though, because that unit has been so predictable over the years. Like, remember last year when this year they're being more fluid, and you can see it, right? They're switching. You're seeing Batherson taking one-timers, which he should be doing. You're seeing Kachuk taking one-timers on the right side. You're seeing Norris like down low and stuff, and Sanderson on the right side. Like, they're moving around. But like over the years, it's just the plays being okay. Stutla brings the puck in. You put it back to Shabbat. Shabbat feeds Norris for a one-timer. Like, that's been the play throughout the years. Now teams are picking up on it, but you got to wonder, it's like for the Sens, they're trying to do the opposite now.
Yeah, I
With
almost wonder that with Norris having been out for so long, if teams would kind of forget about, they're like, oh, they're not really doing that play anymore, and then we could just pull it out of our
yeah,
back pocket. But yeah, I don't know.
we'll see. Like, I just hope that Perron is back soon because, um, I know it's gonna, maybe he's back on Thursday or Saturday. Sorry, who knows? But that's a voice we could have used on the bench tonight.
Oh yeah,
Um, because a guy like Giroux, as much as I love him as a player and I love how he goes 100% every single time tonight, and that hit was tough because I was like, oh, like, is he injured? Because Giroux never gets injured, right?
yeah. The fact that he came back from that was pretty lucky.
Yeah,
I thought it was gonna be a lot worse.
yeah. But there's times where it's like you got to question, like, is that the style of leadership this team needs? And I don't want to bring it up, but I have to because of the amount of losing we've had over the past 3 years, and not to put it all the blame on him. Um, but the frustration when you talk about the mental blocks that this team has, when you see your 36-year-old veteran out there, um, who is ultra competitive, and there's a reason why he's frustrated, banging the boards or complaining to the ref after a call that should have been made, right? But instead the puck goes back the other way and Sanderson misses it and then Pajot scores, right? So it's like you could have just let the play continue and not let that be a distraction. Um, like I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel wrong calling him out, but
it's
it's just
tough.
something I thought about.
It's tough because with such a young team and Giroux being like by far the oldest player until Perron
Mhm.
was signed, it feels like a lot of the leadership falls on him, like on him and Kachuk as the actual captain. So I get what you mean that the frustration shown from Giroux in this game before things really got out of hand, because it was still 1-0 at that point where he's yelling and screaming at the ref for the missed call and then they go down and score the other way. I totally get what you mean. Like, we all love Claude Giroux, but it is a point of criticism here tonight, I would say.
Mhm. And it's just, I don't know. I just wonder, right? Because it's not even like, if I'm talking about playoffs right now, I'm just throwing out hypothetically make the playoffs, right? How is this team going to perform, right? How is Claude Giroux? I mean, he's played in the playoffs before, but how is he going to go over a 7-game series? How is Brady Tkachuk going to deal with all the antics in playoff hockey? How is Tim Stützle going to play in his first playoff series with him as the very flashy player who's going to get hit a ton? It's just, I just wonder because this team might have it on paper, but do they have the playoff mentality going through the entire season to play a full 60? And like tonight, that doesn't back up anything.
For sure.
We're back to square one, right?
Yeah, and that'll lead us pretty nicely into what we had planned for our second segment, which was to talk about the team's mental toughness. But before we fully switch into that segment, just going to do a quick ad read for Hyperdrive Hockey. Check out the flagship show of the Game Over Network on the Game Over Network YouTube channel, Hyperdrive Hockey. All things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. Whatever it is and wherever it is, Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts on the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. And as well, if you follow the Game Over Network on Instagram or TikTok, we have been posting some short clips from Hyperdrive Hockey to give you a little bit of a taste if you haven't chosen to dive into a full episode yet too. So you can also check those out as well. But from there, we're going to throw it into period 2, which, yeah, we wanted to talk about the team's mental toughness. And we were getting into it a little bit already there. Just to give another note on Giroux, like, I don't want to be too negative about him, especially just to throw like a positive point in there. The fact that he came back after that hit, he didn't even want to leave the bench. You do have to give him credit for some mental toughness there, where the trainer was like telling him, no, you got to go to the room, you got to get checked just in case, and he was so stubborn and determined to just stay on the bench, and that he came back into the game and put in a shift out there for trying to tie the game. So credit to him for that too. But yeah, like we said earlier, a lot of frustration shown in the game earlier too, and not just from Giroux. I feel like this is a trend that we have for a lot of the young players on the Sens, like Kachuk and Stützle especially. You see that body language when things aren't going their way. where it's just sometimes it gets a little discouraging and you wonder, is it just because the team is bad, they're always losing, so they're going to look like that, or is it that they don't have that mental toughness where they should be a little bit more confident because it's like, the game's not lost yet, you can still turn it
Mm.
around, and they just get down in the dumps too quickly, it seems.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing that I'll say is that I don't think this is a room, a team, even going back like when this whole thing started, and like I guess you could throw it the COVID year, right? I don't think this is a group that does not care. Um, you see it. You see it. Like you see the competitive nature of this team. Even the low key guys like Sanderson and Shabbat, who are a little bit more even keeled, I can tell that they care. Um, but when it when they go down and like they're gonna have games where they plain out like just don't perform, but what team does not, right? But the thing is that you have to ask about the Ottawa Senators is like, do they have the mental grit? Um, like when you go back to the 2017 team, right? That team had grit. Like no matter what happened, um, on the ice. If they were down a goal, um, they found a way to come back. I'll just give you an example here. Like, remember Game 7 against Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah.
Pittsburgh went up to, of course, you remember it, but um, Pittsburgh went up 2-1 with like 5 minutes left to go. I think Kunitz scored or something. And then the Sens come back right away. Carlson from the point shoots it on, and then Ryan DeZingle, who was like a fourth liner that year, he scores to tie it up. Like, where is that with this team, right? Because if you go back to that game, like they just okay, it's like a goldfish memory, right? You cut the BS that just happened right there. Um, you're down 1 goal and you go back and you tie it up right away. Sure, maybe you got a lucky bounce, but you can't question the effort, right? But with the Sens, it's like they've had this so many times over the years where they've been down 1 goal with the goalie pulled and they don't score. They get chances. They do. And there's been so many, like even the Norris shot. Remember, he was in the slot with like 30 seconds left.
Yeah, i
It's a great
thought
save
i
by
thought that was going to be
Varlamov.
it.
Yeah, I didn't actually.
You didn't have the
I
confidence.
no, I'm sitting here because this has happened so much over the years. I'm literally watching the game like this. Like
Yeah.
I'm not like, yeah, let's go boys. Like I just don't expect it to happen. And I don't know if that's concerning or not, but like it's just how it's gone.
Yeah, I am most of the time like that too. They fooled me a little bit tonight. They do these fake comebacks all the time where they'll get one
Yeah.
or two goals late, and like we said earlier, never tying it with the goalie pulled. But I like the example you brought up of that sort of quick response goal, because I feel like this team rarely does that, and in fact they often have the opposite where it's either after they score a goal they're a little bit lackadaisical, feeling good about themselves, and they let one back the other way. They let the other team get a quick response. Or what we saw tonight, where after the 1-0 goal, within like less than 3 minutes, it was like 2.5 minutes later, then it's 2-0. That one, that trend especially, it's a lot of quick goals against for the Sens. And we saw it last game too. It was the story of the game last game, where it was a close one
Yep.
heading into the third period, and then 2 goals against in the first minute of the third period against Buffalo. That sinks, those quick goals will just sink your team's chances right away.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's been such a trend for the Sens, especially last season too, and to see it repeating this season is really frustrating. With a
Hmm.
new coach, you'd think that they would have identified this as a problem and been able to just, I don't know if it's something you can coach out of the guys, but it seems like it's a mentality issue for sure, where one bad thing happens and they kind of let it spiral into like 2-3 goals against in quick succession.
Yeah, so like Lee scores with 4 minutes left in the period. Then Pajot scores with a minute and a half left. It's like, come on,
Yeah,
right?
those late
Um,
period goals too, that's been happening a lot as
yeah.
well.
It's just, and they're not getting blown out too, right? I know the Buffalo game was really the only blown out game I could think of that we lost, other than maybe Montreal. But like, this is not a team that's getting destroyed every night because they find a way to somehow claw back in. And the Jensen and Batherson goals got them back in the game. But I mean, where like All right, like where is Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk with the tying goal?
Yeah.
Those are your guys you're gonna need. Or yeah, I'll just lump in Sanderson too. Those are the guys you locked up long term. You got to get a goal from one of them. Because I'll lump in Jensen and Batherson here, where they're kind of more in the middle, right? Like Batherson's not a guy that's gonna get hot. Like, he's not going to be pushing guys after the whistle and getting really frustrated. I don't even know if we've seen that really even at all over the years.
Yeah, he's one of the more chill
Jensen,
players.
yeah, and then like Jensen's the steady Eddie defenseman, doesn't really show frustration at all. But and then there's guys like Timmy, Giroux, and Brady who are either all the way up here. I'm not sure if I'm on screen right now, or all the way down below. And when it gets low, like we're where you're gonna have fans like us who are gonna call them out. Um, and when they're really high, like we're gonna praise them like crazy. Like we were doing that with Giroux earlier this year, with his game against Colorado, and then him like picking up a couple of points against St. Louis and stuff. Um, but yeah, like those players need to step up in the time moments. Like I need a Timmy goal. I need a Timmy goal in the last minute here because he's the guy that needs the puck, right? He's the guy going forward. Like, let's say you're in a 7-game playoff series and you're in like the second round or something. You need a tying goal. You're gonna have to get the puck in the hands of the German. Like he's gonna be the number one scorer for all these years going forward, unless you like trade him or whatnot. But you're not doing that. And Timmy's the guy. He can shoot. He can pass. He's the guy that needs to control the pace of play. And he needs reps. Like he needs reps in the regular season where he's going to tie the game up late, so that come playoff time, he's not broken and he doesn't feel the pressure coming onto him. And like, I mean, you need to get to playoff first, of course, but you're just not seeing that right now.
Yeah, we're not seeing those clutch moments to save the team some points just at the end of games, just getting to
Mm-hmm.
overtime. I think we had one overtime so far this year against the Kings. Other than that, we just don't have those moments. And you would think that those more like aggressive, hot-headed players that you mentioned, like Kachuk, Giroux, and Stützle, you would think those would be the type of guys to step up in a high-pressure situation like that. But it just hasn't happened, and it's tough. Like I don't know where we go from here. Like I feel like the team needs a psychologist or something to
Yeah.
get all their heads checked, because it's just they can't come up with those clutch moments.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, it's interesting because it's like competing in sports, the mentality, like what percentage of it do you think is like a part of the game? Because you could have all the physical tools to be like an elite NHL player or just an elite athlete. But if you don't, I feel like if you don't have the goldfish memory, then you're not going to be that consistent, and you're not going to get the best results that you can possibly get. Sorry, this is sort of a new topic for me to like bring up,
It's all
especially
good.
on a live stream here. But like, I mean, I'm just thinking like, for example, like when I play volleyball and stuff, right? If I screw up, I hit the ball into the net. I just try to forget it as much as I can. Um, and it's completely different than with them. They're professional athletes and they're playing in front of 20,000 fans tonight. But they're professional for a reason, right? And you got to wonder, it's like they got the professional skills, but their mindset, like maybe for the guys like Timmy and Brady or something like that, they just haven't fully developed um, to a high standard yet. But winning's going to do that for you, right? And they need to win to feel the confidence and know how to do it as well, because this team doesn't know how to do it. And that includes tying a goal up late, right?
Yeah, I think so much of it is, in terms of who is the best players, is the mentality, the hockey IQ, and the like mental toughness and perseverance and stuff like that. Because the skill gap between most players in the NHL is like less than we think. Everyone who's in
So,
Yeah, everyone who's in
yeah.
the NHL is super talented, and it's just I feel like it really is the mentality that separates the best from the rest. So that feels like the major thing that this team has to figure out, because again, they can play pretty good for most of the game. Just that full 60-minute effort and not getting caught up on mistakes, I think, is going to be huge to look to improve.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, okay, I'll ask you this. Like, where does this game rank on as the worst of this? Do you think it's not the
Hmm.
worst of the season, right?
Buffalo would
Um,
have to be right
yeah.
as the worst.
Um, well, they didn't even play like okay, they didn't play good, but
Yeah.
they didn't play like
It was mostly
trash.
the third period that
Yeah,
ruined
and
that one.
they got goalie too. Like Luukkonen was great. Even tonight, I think Varlamov made some really good saves too. And I was wondering, like, at the end of the second, I was like, are we getting goalied again with because we had Shesterkin, we had Luukkonen, and then here again Varlamov, but I don't think we got goalied. So yeah, like I always go back to the Colorado one because they straight up stunk for again 50 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes are like, oh yeah, we know how to play hockey again,
Hmm.
and then they
Tonight
used the
felt
good
similar.
vibes. Yeah, and they tonight they got the crowd behind them, but it's like, all right, like let's say they're on the road and they get two quick goals there. They don't have the crowd behind them for that one, right? And that's another thing to tack on to the mental toughness thing. If you are not in your own barn and you'll have your fans behind your back, how are you going to scrape out an extra goal to tie it up, right? You don't have first change. And you can't call matchups. So you're going to have to figure out a way, whether it's your depth players or it's your first liners, you're going to have to figure out a way to tie the game up. And we've seen that too many times. Like, even if you go back to the 22-23 season, they were right there for the playoff hunt because Florida made it, I think, with like 93 points. And you just got to wonder if they tied some of those games up, maybe they squeak in, but then they just didn't. Last year was completely different. Like they plain out like were bad. And there was a lot of drama and stuff going on. But now, like I know people can bring out the moral victories and stuff, and I've seen it on Twitter tonight, but at the same time I'm saying it's not worth it. Like this team shouldn't be getting moral victories as we are 2 months away from 2025. Like,
Yeah, we're past the point for that, where we're the past the point where it matters. I mean, it's still moral victories are still positives, but in the end, the goal is victories in the standings.
yeah. Yeah, like we need extra points here. And that's what the Islanders are doing, right? That's a classic example of a team that can go out there and they love playing those tight-knit games. They've done that forever. Going back to like Barry Trotz when he started. They love getting those extra points and they never had the offensive like firepower. They never even had like a right-hand man for Matt Barzell to dish the puck to. But what they did is they just played a solid game and they were a team that had extremely good mental toughness. And that's what got them to back conference finals. And that's also what got them into basically the playoffs every year. Like last year, they had what, 15 overtime losses? It doesn't matter because they made it, right? And I saw some tweets tonight, like saying like, "Oh, it would suck to be an Islanders fan because they're like so boring." But
Not at
it's
all.
like we could, they made the playoffs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I wish the Sens had the success of the Islanders of the past seven
Yeah.
years. Like basically, since the Sens became bad, that's right when the Islanders became pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. What would it be? 2019? Yeah. Um,
That's one thing that I think as Sens fans we need to do a bit of a better job is being humble. Like we're like, oh, this is so boring. The Islanders they suck. Is like, well, they're way better than us. Like
mhm.
with their track
Yeah.
record, and it's the same with Buffalo. It's like, oh, we're so much better than them. They're off to a bad start. They caught up to us immediately. They blew us out.
Mhm.
And same thing with Boston coming up. It's like, oh, Boston had a rough start. I think they won the last couple. I'm not sure how their game ended tonight, but yeah, it's like again, if you lose to Boston, then they're probably gonna pass us in the standings too. I feel like sometimes we get ahead of ourselves as a fan base.
Yeah. Boston won tonight, by the way, in
Of
overtime.
course, of course. So they
Yeah,
might
of
already
course.
be ahead of us with three
Yeah.
straight wins.
And Buffalo somehow beat the Rangers on the road 6-1.
What the
Luckily,
hell is
Montreal
that?
lost.
So where was that Igor Shesterkin when when we were in MSG when the Sens were there?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Let's see. I'm wondering if Quick lost. I don't want to
Yeah,
get
maybe it
or
was Jonathan
won
Quick. I
or
don't
sorry,
know.
played. Yeah, they actually. I don't know who they pulled here. Oh, it's probably yeah. They did pull Shesterkin.
God,
5 goals on 12 shots. Wow.
on 12
Anyway,
shots.
yeah,
Jeez.
it's fine. I mean, like, but yeah, like I don't know. they got to do it. They're like, all right. So I feel a little bit better now that we've vented a little bit.
Hmm.
But because if the sky is falling and we have like crapped the bed in November, then I'm going to like throw a fit or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna be hot.
if November continues the way that it's currently going, I'm gonna be coming on here yelling and screaming. We're at
Mhm.
the point where it's like calm frustration and disappointment, but yeah, we're like
Mhm.
on the edge of it getting bad.
Yeah. And we can do that because we're the fans, right? We can overreact as much as we want because we live in an era where there's social media and we can go on Twitter and we can see all the negativity and react to that. But like those players, those 18 skaters and the one goalie that's in the net, like they got to put that and store it away. Like they got to get back to their old ways. And they did that so recently. Like it's not like they're on a 6 game slide here. They're on a 2 game losing streak, right? They just got to tap into that again. And they had the same lineup that they had against Seattle tonight. Without sorry, Zub was in the lineup.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about that yet, but it doesn't matter because we still lost. Uh, but yeah, and I don't think like a lot of people saying, "Oh, why is Hamonic in the lineup?" I don't think that was really the issue tonight because yes, sure he was a -1 and I think he was on the ice for the who scored the third goal in the third
I
period.
don't even remember, but yeah, the third goal, Wallstrom. There it
Yeah,
is.
oh my god, what you allowed Wallstrom to
First goal of the
score?
year. Yo, that
Yeah.
goal was Wallstrom's first goal and Matt Martin's first assist and Kyle McLean's first
Yeah.
assist. So you
Like
let
what
those
is that
guys
line?
you let
Is
those
that
guys score.
if that's the line, then oh my god, you deserve that. If that's the line to score, you deserve to lose the game.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, but and it's a backhand too. And like Forsey he gave them a chance tonight. Sure, like you would have liked to save on one of those, I guess, but uh, I've defended the players a lot this year. I think, and I want to be a little bit more fair to the goaltenders. And this is a game where the game is on the players 100% because you're against the Islanders. You know.
Yeah. And I think that'll do it for our second segment. And you briefly mentioned the lineup decision of keeping Hamonic in. We're going to get into our third topic in a second here, which is the lineup decisions both for this game and for what we think they should do going forward. But before that, just going to get another quick ad read. Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our Patreon page, and we're working on a page through LaRouche, which is a crowdfunding platform for companies based in Quebec. For LaRouche, we're aiming to raise $15K, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that allow us to employ more people. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see as giveaways from these crowdfunding efforts, or ideas for perks on Patreon for the various tiers, let us know in the comments on Twitter, Instagram, or our Discord server, which is free to everyone to join. You can find the invite links on our website, thegameovernetwork.com. So yeah, into the third period here of our show, lineup decisions. And since we already mentioned it, I do agree with you that Hamonic, he was not the problem tonight, but I think just the optics of leaving him in the lineup over JBD is frustrating to me. And obviously, we all heard Mark Mathot like going off on it. I think it was in the first intermission,
Hmm.
where it just doesn't seem right. I gotta pull this up in my camera roll quickly here, where there was a tweet comparing the expected goals for with Clevin and Hamonic at 5v5 and Clevin and JBD at 5v5. And to be fair, it is a small sample size for Clevin with Hamonic because I think that was just for the first 2 games
Yeah.
before Zub got injured. But they had a 37.78 Corsi 4 percentage and a 40.83 expected goals for percentage, which for a small sample size is still really bad. I don't know what it was tonight, but I doubt that it was particularly good. And then compared to Clevin with JBD at 5v5, a 58.57 Corsi 4 percentage and a 58.99 expected goals for percentage. So I feel like when your third pairing of Clevin and JBD has stayed that solid and that steady for almost like 10 games now, I feel like it just didn't make sense to take JBD out.
Yeah. Oh, this is a tough one because, like, I don't think they lost the game, but you gotta wonder with that Wallstrom goal, like if you just don't have, if you have JBD on the ice for that one, you
Hmm.
have a little bit more of the transporting the puck ability than Hamonic.
Definitely.
Like Hamonic used to, I know he was never the offensive defenseman or anything, but he used to, even 2 years ago, I feel like he was better at least like making the first pass. But now it's just like he either just slaps it in and it's so repetitive. And I get like you need some grit and some veteran leadership on the blue line and stuff. But and he's good at blocking shots, I'll give him that. And he's a hard-nosed defender. Like I respect the style that he plays 100% and the amount of like tenacity he has throughout his career. Like he's 35 years of age and he's had a long career, and that's very impressive for a defensive defenseman who plays that like that. But when you have Tyler Clevin on your left side, that's not Eric Brandstrom there. You don't like Tyler Clevin has done the best that I think he can be when it comes to increasing his puck skills. Remember when he was drafted, people were like, "This guy is
Yeah,
useless
they
in
were
the
like,
offense."
he's nothing but a big bruiser
Yeah,
and is gonna control the puck like a grenade. But he's made a lot of
yeah.
progress on that.
Oh, like a lot. Like even if you go to North Dakota, like I remember seeing him in his first season, you're wondering, it's like, how is this guy gonna be an NHL player? And then he really improved. Um, and he was really raw. And now you're starting to see like he can sort of make a first pass, but when it comes to like the raw skills and the offensive IQ and everything, that pairing is not going to score a lot. When you have JBD on the right side of Klebin, that's a guy that has scored in the past, and he's been an offensive defenseman, sort of. Um, like I'll give you an example here. Like, remember the Brady goal against Seattle where he tipped it in?
Yeah, that was a
Um,
JBD shot, right?
yeah, yeah. Like you saw JBD walk the line and use sort of that mobility and drag it and curl it and look for the tip out front. Travis Hammonick's not doing that, and Clevin might, but like you don't know that yet because he's still unproven. When you have JBD back there, you have a guy that can transport the puck. And when you have Hamonic out there, you have two defensive defensemen. And most of the time that doesn't work, I feel like. Especially in the regular season. Maybe the playoffs, but when there's no offense there anyway, then even if you're like average defensively, you're still not scoring to like outweigh those defensive deficiencies.
Exactly. And to give a little bit of credit to the Clevin and Hamonic pairing tonight, I double checked the stats, and they were basically dead even in terms of Corsi for the shot attempts for and against. So
Okay.
better than their first couple of games of the year when they were paired together. But it's still worse than the average numbers that Clevin and JBD were putting together as a pairing. And yeah, like I agree with completely with everything you were saying. It was basically exactly what I was gonna say about the benefit
Yeah.
of JBD over Hamonic is the ability to move the puck and actually stick handle as opposed to just swatting it to try to chip it out of the zone, or the slap shot every time in the offensive zone is super frustrating. And we saw that multiple times tonight in the third period when Hamonic was on the ice. It's like he's just like, oh, I want to keep the cycle going, so I'm just gonna whack it. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
whack it with like no aim, no like concept of an idea of where he wants the puck to go. It's just like get it away from me, get it in deep.
Yeah.
But JBD has a little bit more stick handling ability. Well, really a lot more stick handling ability.
Hmm.
He's not like the best passer, but clearly better than Hamonic in that regard. And just yeah, I feel like when you have Clevin and JBD paired together, JBD can take a bit of the pressure off of Clevin in terms of getting the puck out of the zone. Whereas with Clevin and Hamonic, it's up to Clevin on his own. And he had a couple
Hmm.
of rough turnovers tonight that I didn't like.
He did. Yeah.
Which which the thing is, if you gave the puck to Hamonic, I don't think he was going to do much better with it. So
No,
yeah,
no,
that's the
right?
thing.
Like if you have your 22-year-old defender being the puck transporter and the guy who was drafted 4 years ago and that was like beat on for not like being really bad with the puck,
Yeah.
he's come such a long way. Like I know we're saying this again, but it's crazy that Clevin has become this good already, I think. Like you're looking at a player like Eliason. I think this is a little bit more sorry, yeah, Gabriel Eliason, they
Yeah.
just drafted, right?
He's a big
Like
guy
that
too.
guy's he but yeah, he's like the max when it comes to raw skills and everything. But Clevin, it's like it only took him 4 years really to get to the league and like be a solid defenseman out there, right? But it's still a lot to ask for him. Especially when you have a guy who's played 15 seasons in the NHL. You would have thought that maybe he doesn't have the foot speed, but at this point he would be able to like, get the puck and make like not a simple pass, but like, you know, be a little creative once in a while instead of like slapping it in every single time and beaver tapping for the one timer at the blue
Yeah,
line.
that's the thing is just no matter which pairing Travis Hamonic is on, his partner has to carry the load of pretty much anything. So when it was with Sanderson, made Sanderson look much worse. And I mean, I didn't think him and Zub were great tonight, but we know that that pairing is going to be better.
Mhm.
Just probably just Zub getting back into the swing of things. He wasn't perfect tonight, but we know how he plays. We know how solid he is. But yeah, when you move Hamonic down, then suddenly he's got to get carried by a third pairing defender, and that's even harder for Clevin to do than it is for Sanderson to do. So
Yeah,
it's just not ideal. It's really just not
no.
ideal. And when we saw Clevin and JBD together, there was no carrying needed from one or the other. I felt like they worked really well together. So I'm hoping that's a change that's made going into the next game against Boston. I want to see JBD in, and Hamonic can have a rest. He's played a lot of hockey over the last 10
Yes.
games for the Sens, more than he should, like in terms of the depth chart. So like it's not even like too much of an insult to give him a breather in the press box. It's like, okay,
Yep.
you're a veteran, you're not the fastest skater anymore. We'll give you a breather because you've been playing up above your head and putting in decent shifts for us overall. Like it hasn't been colossally bad. It's like it's not an insult to scratch Hamonic at this point. I would like to see it happen next game.
Yeah, because he hasn't been like, nah, at the same time, I don't know if he's been great. I'm trying to defend him here.
Yeah.
It's just, why are we here, right? Like, this guy, he's the ideal seventh defenseman,
hmm
right? You want JBD to be a guy on your third pair going forward. I don't think we can expect him to be a top four guy, but that's okay if he's an NHL defenseman. But if you want him to be happy and like want to stay in Ottawa going forward and play on your third pair and not like want a ton of money, you got to play him in games, right? And this is not doing any favor. I know the coach doesn't control the contracts and everything, but Hamonic, he's played so long in this league, like, and he knows like his performance last year was not good. And he even said that himself. If he's a seventh defenseman at 34, 35 years of age, that's fine. Like there's a reason why he's a veteran. He could step in here and there and pitch in and be fresh, be a fresh body and stuff. But he's playing top four. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
JBD needs reps still. He's looked good, right? He's not a kid anymore. He's gonna be 25 this year, right? And that's when defensemen really start to get it going. And defensemen need to play in games. They need to play in games. And JBD got a lot last year, but this year now he's playing half. I think Hamonic hasn't been scratched, and that's just crazy.
Yeah, he's played every game so far this year, eh? Every
Yep.
single game. That's
Yep.
that's wild. As we were all saying, like, at best he's a seventh D, and so far he's been 6+, like starting as
Mhm.
the sixth and then moving up to the top four. So that's rough, and we gotta see some changes in that now that Zub is back. Um, but I also wanted to talk about for lineup decisions the forwards because Shane Pinto started skating again today. He might be returning in Boston, and Perron was back with the team as well, which is great to see. It seems like things are going well with his family issues. We know that his wife gave birth and the baby seems to be doing well, so very happy to hear that. But in terms of the forwards, you got to take some guys out to get them back in. And first off, I'll say, like, usually you would be taking out a fourth liner, but I feel like they can't break up the line of Cousins, Gaudette, and McEwen because that
No.
line was absolutely killer again tonight. And they don't get on the score sheet, but like ridiculous Corsi and just really good forecheck, always pressuring the other team. I've been surprised with how long this fourth line has kept this up at this point. I'm really happy with them.
Yeah, Cousins you sort of expect it from because he's been a valuable like fourth line player throughout his career. He's
Hmm.
scored and I don't know what defensively, but he's always been consistent scoring. Godet, it's like that's a classic AHL scorer, like a guy that he's supposed to be in Europe at this rate. McEwen was like not great last year, and he's never been a guy that has been an everyday NHL player, albeit the only time that he has was with Travis Green. So I think he utilizes him pretty well. But yeah, that line shouldn't be this good. And I don't know if that's like a good or bad thing, but I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing. Yeah, but I agree with you. You don't take really any of them out. They do not deserve it. They don't deserve to be taken out. You take out Stapchuk, he's getting sent down.
Yeah, he's the obvious choice, especially for Pinto at that center
Yeah.
position. Then, like, I'll say for winger, it's probably Gregor coming out for David Perron, right?
Hmm. Mm,
Because other than him, you're into like your typical like you're the typical top six guys, and then the other person being Mike Amadio, who to be fair hasn't been great lately.
that's what I'm saying.
He hasn't found the back
Right?
of the net yet. I wouldn't be mad if they scratched him, but
No.
I feel like Noah Gregor is the more obvious choice to come out.
I could agree. Like it could be either one of them, but if you're Travis Green and you're seeing Mike Amadio out there, I don't know if you should be that impressed.
Yeah.
I was high on him, especially at the start. I'm like, oh, this is a nice player to have in your bottom six. Like he's smart and stuff. But the past couple of games, this dude has been pretty invisible.
Pretty much a
Um,
ghost.
yeah, and he's got his contract. Might not be the worst thing if Perron and Pinto come back in if you let him sit a game. Because that's not a guy like he's been through it his entire career. He's like 28 now, and he was only just like a regular player every day like a couple seasons ago. It's not bad to give that guy a refresher. Like you know how we have the Stutzla and Kachucks, and they're like either really high or really low. Like Amadio's as even keeled as they get,
Hmm.
right? So I think he's going to be logical about it and be understanding if he does get scratched. Um, we'll see though. I mean, because he kills penalties. He's sort of a substitute for the power play, but I don't think it's a horrible thing if they scratch him for a game.
Yeah, and some of the supposed third liners today actually had less ice time than the fourth line. To do a quick comparison, the fourth line that I was gassing up so much, their Corsi was all above 60%, and somehow Zach McEwen was 79%, which is 19 shot
What?
attempts for while he was on the ice and only 5 against. So
Like, how is that so good? I
yeah, like I felt like that
don't.
line was in the offensive zone like every single shift basically, which is what it is. It's basically how much time you're spending in your own zone versus in the offensive zone, and if you're suppressing shot attempts or helping generate them for your team. The fourth line was doing a really good job at that, but on the inverse, the third line, which I say this because Ostapchuk and Gregor played less minutes than anyone on the fourth line, so they were kind of
Yeah.
at the actual fourth line tonight. In a game where the Sens had 57.5% Corsi overall, 5-on-5 for the whole game, these three guys on this line were the worst.
Yeah,
Ostapchuk,
they were.
Amadio, Gregor all being at 44 or 46%. Pretty much the only guys other than Greg and Zub who were below 50%. So that line was just doing absolutely nothing today. I think literally any of them can come out of the lineup next game for Pinto and Perron, and I'll be happy with that because I think the top six maybe you can shake it up a bit, but I wouldn't like pull anyone from the bottom six to do that. I would keep that fourth line together. If you're gonna shake out the top six, just switch around the first and second liners, and that third line as it's supposed to be, that's gotta go. That
Hmm.
was just absolutely nothing happening for them tonight.
Yeah, they did a decent job at the start. I think they got put together in the Seattle game because I think Gregor scored. I think they got the first goal of that game. And
Gaudette scored the first goal in that
oh
one.
yeah, okay. What game am I thinking? Oh, maybe I'm thinking of
I think
St. Louis.
St. Louis, because yeah,
Yeah,
Gregor scored assisted by
yeah.
Amadio in that one. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and then Amadio got an assist on the Seattle game, and it was looking pretty good. And I remember talking to Charlie about this. It's like, okay, the fourth line, like they're on a roll right now. The third line, they kind of know their role. They're like sort of the speedy two-way forward sort of line with Gregor and Ostapchuk. But now you're starting to see Ostapchuk. He's not getting the full trust of the coaching staff. So once Pinto's done or comes back, Ostapchuk's going down 100%. He still needs a little bit more time, and that's okay. Where yeah, like if you bring Pinto back in, you're probably throwing him with, I guess, Perron, hopefully, who's back in, and Mario. Maybe you reunite that line. However, maybe you throw in Perron on the first line with Stutzla and Kachuk and get them going. Um, but I think this is a decent time for the coaches to really assess like the lines going forward because you're 13 games into the season, you're 6-7. That's not good. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be better. Um, I know we've
Yeah,
had pairs and stuff, but with like the Timmy and Brady stuff, I don't know. I actually don't know if they're the best
I'm
together.
wondering if we should go back to Timmy and Giroux as a pair like last season. They did pretty well for a while with Matthew Joseph as their left winger,
Yeah.
and at the same time, going back a few years, the first line used to be Kachuk, Norris, and Batherson. I wonder if they try a bit of a throwback to that. I could see that being
hmm
interesting.
Yeah, like reunite that line a little bit, and then you got Timmy Brady or sorry, Timmy Perron maybe, and I mean we're forgetting Greg in this equation. But the one thing I will say is I blanked out for a sec there is you need a third line like really bad.
Yeah,
And this team has sort of lacked that over the last while because they've had the top six, right? The top six has always scored. And maybe they've had the fourth line, but the fourth line is like your fourth line. Like you just need solid hockey for 10 minutes a night. The third line, though, like those are guys that are going to be playing 13, 14 minutes a night, and they're going to be really valuable on your PK and power play potentially. Ridley Gray could be one of those, and Pinto, right? Pinto, like he's so good as a third liner. Um, because he can score, he can take face-offs. He's like 6'3". He's a good, like he's so well rounded, and it just sucks that we're not getting him in the lineup right now. Amadio should be a good third liner. He should. We're just not seeing it so far, at
ideally,
least.
if you had Greg, Pinto, Amadio as a third line, or maybe Perron in there instead of Amadio, I feel like
hmm
that's perfect. Like in
It's
theory,
good. Yeah, in theory. And I know like okay, the Mario Gregor and a Statchuk line, like ideally Gregor's on your fourth.
yeah,
Or
he's like a 12th or 13th forward
yeah,
ideally.
he's your Parker Kelly replacement,
Hmm.
basically. He shouldn't be playing 13 minutes a night. But the thing is that injuries are gonna happen regardless. So you need guys that can elevate. And I think they did a good job, at least on paper this year, in bringing guys that are a little bit more like they can move out through the lineup, like Amadio and Perron on paper, at least. We just have yet to see it, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I just miss a guy like Connor Brown. I love that guy.
Yeah, I would have taken him back in the summer if it was an option, but
Yeah,
uh, still in Edmonton for him, eh?
yeah. I don't know how he's doing this year, but I love that guy. But that's sort of your Amadio is supposed to be your sort of your Perron replacement, ideally.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, like okay, Connor Brown got me thinking because it feels like when the Sens were not really trying to be good yet, they had some of those ideal third liners. You mentioned Connor Brown and also Pajot too,
Nick
like
Paul.
Nick Paul as well. Could you imagine Nick Paul, Pajot, and
hmm
Connor Brown as a third line? I mean,
Well, yeah.
like obviously it doesn't work out that way that you can keep all of those assets up until now from like when they used to be on the team, but damn, we had some players like that before that were perfect third liners, but they were often playing higher up in the lineup like second or first line as on a
Yeah.
rebuilding team, and now you start to miss them. So hopefully the team can find the mix on the third line with the players that they do have.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because, like, I feel like this hasn't been a huge topic over the years. It's like, okay, our top six is good, our top four is good, but that third line, like, you need the identity line.
Mm-hmm.
Like you talk about Tampa with Gord, Goudreau, and Coleman.
Yeah.
You go back to like Neil, Vermette, Kelly, like that line in the cup runs. Like those are damn good. Like those are quality like 30 to 40 point scores, and the Sens just really haven't had that. Well, I mean, Pinto, when Pinto's there, I would say Greg is in that category. Now you just sort of need the third guy, but you also just need them to be healthy.
Yeah,
Like plain
healthy
and simple, right?
and just need to find the combination that works. We've got a few names that can fit there, but we got to have them all healthy at the right time
We
and
got to see it, right?
finding the right setup between the three of
Mhm.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that pretty much leads us into our last segment, which is taking a look at the chat. Before we do that, we have one last ad read, which is, of course, for our merch, which the slideshow is unfortunately going to have to cover up Damian's face for a little bit. But hey, if you enjoy Game Over Ottawa or any of the shows on the Game Over Network, what better way to support something you love than by rocking it as clothing? Game Over's apparel line has dropped with 3 unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, want to make a statement with our established design, which is currently on sale, or if you want to wear your love for goalies proudly with our live and die by the goalie design, or if you just need another coffee to get through the winter, we have you covered. All of those designs available as both t-shirts and hoodies. Of course, all in the Ottawa branding as well as for all the other networks, cities as well, the 7 Canadian teams. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. Use the QR code on stream now and take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. There we have it, Damian. And now into our 4th segment. Gonna take a look at the chat. Have you noticed anything that you'd like to point out in there?
Yeah, so I was just looking on Twitter here to see if I could see any interviews and stuff.
Okay.
Brady, like, he looks like he's battling, like, oh, should I be dejected right now? Or should I just keep calm and be level-headed? Just looking
Yeah.
at his face with the interviews.
He's like trying to keep composed, but do you get the sense that like he's
like
pissed anyway?
he's thinking it, but it's
Yeah.
not there just yet.
Not
But we
quite
live to
bubbling
fight
over
another day,
yet.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start off with Adam Firebear, a regular in the chat. Shout out Adam. Are they playing Ullmark enough? I'll throw
Yeah.
it to you.
That's a big question. I tweeted this earlier today. I don't mind the goalie rotation because that's what Ullmark was used to in Boston with Swayman, and that's
Yeah.
what seemed to find him the most success. And get him putting up those like ridiculous save percentage numbers was just he never really played a ton of games in a row because most of the time him and Swayman were both healthy at the same time. There wasn't too many times where like Ullmark had to take over a large stretch of games. So even though he comes here and he's the obvious starter or should be, I don't mind the rotation, but I do have to wonder that so far it hasn't really been working this year. He's been really hot and cold, and like a few games in a row could help improve his confidence. I feel like if you're on a roll and you're playing every second game and you're comfortable with that and you're performing well with that, that's great. But if we're doing that and one or both of our goalies are like not being consistent at all, then maybe it is time to switch up the strategy, right? Like Ullmark is definitely going to start in Boston. You have to start him against his former team, and since that's just the order of the rotation at this moment, but regardless of the result against Boston, I have to think you put him in against Toronto as well, right? Like I think both of the next 2 games have to be Ullmark's, eh?
Yeah, they have to be because it's like you can't have your backup goalie going into the lineup in crucial divisional games. And they did Ullmark for Buffalo, which makes sense, right? But I think we want to see him a little bit more because it's one thing if you're bringing a guy like Corpusalo, but when you bring in a Vezina goaltender who you also signed to a 4-year extension, like you got to start playing him a little bit more, especially when he's coming off that injury and he's got to figure it out. And that's the one thing that I still want to hold on to hope a little bit more with this season is that we have not seen the best of Linus Ullmark.
That's true.
Like, right? We've seen one very good game where he stole it for us. We haven't had a goaltender that could do that since like Craig Anderson, right? So
and yeah, since that first game where he did steal it, it's like we've been chasing the high of that one, right?
Yeah, you saw it, right? And he's not going to do it every game, but like you have a starter there that can give you a chance. And the one thing about, I feel like maybe in the maybe in the past years, like we thought maybe we could have outscored teams. Like you go back to the DeBrincat year and stuff, like we scored a ton of goals, but we just couldn't really defend and make a save. Now you have maybe the opposite a little bit, where your goaltending looks to be sort of your strength a little bit. And your top four looks really good on paper. And the offense, now it's about, you're getting scoring out of your top six, more about your depth. But if you have a good goaltender and a good defense on paper, that's going to give you a chance regardless every single night. So that's why I'm holding on to a bit of hope here. Linus Ullmark has not played to the best of his abilities. And I got confidence that he's going to do it, because when you talk about the team as a whole having that mental block, Linus Ullmark, I don't think is one of those players.
Yeah.
He is one of those consistent goldfish memory guys. But that Buffalo game, you're watching him, you're like, okay, like what's going on here, sorta. However, he's human. He's gonna have bad games. And I don't like at the end of the season, I don't see a scenario, like regardless, where Linus Ullmark has a save percentage of like under 905.
Yeah,
Like there's
I feel
no
like,
way, right?
and I feel like 905 goaltending for this team will be enough on a lot of nights, because even though the offense has struggled a bit in the last few games, they're usually getting like 3 goals a game most of the time. So at that point, the 905, it depends on how many shots you're allowing a game at that point, because 905 on like 20 shots is probably 2 goals against ish, and then 905 on 30 shots, that's more like 3 goals. But yeah, like I don't think his save percentage is going to be lower than 900 for much longer. Like we all have faith in him to turn it around.
Yeah, with Forsberg, it's kind of all over the place. Like he could be really good, or he could be average like he was tonight, or he could throw up a stinker like he did against LA. So you never know with him. With Ullmark, you have like there's a goaltender that's in the net that I just feel safe in the net for now.
Yeah.
Until we'll see how the season goes on, where if he starts putting out bad performances, I'm gonna feel very uncomfortable going into every single game, because it's like with the Sens and their goalie history, you gotta feel it's like, wow, are we just cursed? Or is there something in the water there? I don't know. But for now, like I'm holding hope that Linus Ullmark is gonna come into this lineup and play a little bit more games. And like he's got to guide us to the playoffs. Because goaltenders are so damn important. Like it's insane.
The other thing with Forsberg too is that they're not exactly planning on keeping him past this season. Like ideally,
Not for
with
now.
Sogard getting a one-way on his deal next year, the plan is to let Forsberg go and bring Sogard up as the backup. So unless Ullmark is like unplayably bad, which so far he hasn't been, he's had some good games and some bad games. It feels like you probably should get Ullmark rolling at a certain point, because he's your guy past this year. Like, yeah, you can maybe do the tandem thing for a bit now because Forsberg has had some really good games, but yeah, the cap hit going up to $8 million for Ullmark next year, and Forsberg's contract expiring next year, and you're probably not bringing him back. It's probably is time to get Ullmark on a steady roll of games.
Yeah, like I would be fine if you're paying 8.25 million. You got to be playing him 55 games a year, I would think.
Yeah, 55 to 60 for sure.
Yeah, like 60. I'm wondering if I'm pushed it too far, but I mean it's 55 to 60, right? That's not like that much of a difference. With Forsberg, it's like I think he's more of his ceiling is like a quality backup sort of thing, so he could play 25, I think. But since Ullmark is making 8.25, you got to make him your starter, like, and your guy that the players are going to have being used to behind them. And yeah, like I think he'll start the next 2 games. So I think this is just like a little blip in the road to start the season. But when the season is done, I think we're probably going to see Ullmark in like the 50s and then Forsberg maybe in the 30s. That's not the end of the world, I guess.
I think that makes sense too. And
Mhm.
the injury, the mysterious injury that he had doesn't
Yeah.
help either. Like coming back from that, we don't necessarily know if he's like 100% or if he's coming back at like 80, 90%. So yeah, that makes it hard to getting injured after the first two games is hard to really get accustomed to playing goal in front of a completely new team, completely new defensive system and that too. So I feel like cutting Ullmark some slack so far is totally fair.
Yeah. Um, I think what is he at, like an 890 save percentage right now?
Something like that.
That's gonna get better, and the Sens D is gonna get better. Hypothetically,
Yeah, it should. Will it is
it
another question,
should.
but it should,
Yeah,
hopefully.
it's funny because it's like as a fan, you feel optimistic, and maybe in a time like right now where we've gotten all of our bad vibes off of us a little bit, and now we can focus on the optimism, and the optimism might continue for the next 24 hours or so until the puck drops, and then you watch the team play,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, okay, I understand why I haven't seen playoffs in so long. uh so there's going to be a lot of mental battles going this season. There's going to be a lot.
Yeah, and in terms of that mental toughness, it's going to be big in the next two games against divisional opponents, Boston and Toronto. To end off tonight, what's your score prediction for Sens versus Bruins on Saturday?
Saturday, they're playing on the road, right?
Yeah, on the road, that's tough
Mm.
too because only one road win so far.
Yeah,
That's
why,
fucking. How can
like,
you even predict a
right?
win? Yeah.
Yeah. How
Oh
should I
God.
feel I'm sorry, like I'm going with the loss here.
Yeah.
I may be a little bit more negative than the average fan out there, but I feel like you're a little bit more positive than me, but
I
I don't know.
try, but
Yeah.
most of the time it's a little forced.
I just try, like, the reason why. Okay, I'll give you the score. I will say 4-2 Bruins. Same thing as tonight.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah, like I'm going to this season, I'm not expecting a playoff position. Would I like to make it? Yes, but I've been hurt too many times over the years to and I don't want to become that delusional fan that thinks that, oh, if this thing just went right, then we would have made it. It's like, no, just make it. Like
Yeah.
just make the playoffs and then talk your trash. But for now, you got to get in no matter what. And yeah, that's how I'll end it for myself tonight.
Cool. My camera has decided to die on a freeze frame of me blinking, which looks
Nice.
looks fantastic. So that's a good time to wrap it up. I think I'm gonna predict 3-2. I'll say overtime loss to the Bruins.
Okay.
Maybe we can get a point on the road. That's my slight little bit of optimism.
Yeah,
Is
I would
not
take it.
not predicting a win, but predicting an overtime loss to at least give us something. But yeah, that's gonna do it for tonight. Game Over Ottawa will be back on Saturday with Charlie hosting, and I believe he's going to have 2G24 on, which should be an awesome show between the two of them. Anything you wanted to say before we go, Damien?
No, not really. It's the first time being under 500 this year, so that's, we as fans haven't had that this year, and every time we lose, it's like the worst thing in the world because you just feel like it's coming back and you're gonna have another bad season again. But it's up to the guys in the room. Like if they want to show maturity, they got to show it no matter what. Um, and you want to see points on the board.
Yeah.
Uh, you want to see points on the board, like no matter what, even if it's an 8-1 win or if it's a 2-1 overtime win, you need 2 points regardless. And the more that this season goes on, and I don't see them picking up extra points, that's the more concerned I'm going to be about just this core going forward. Because hockey is talent, but you need grit and mental toughness at the end of the day. So
Yep, I agree. It's do or die time with American Thanksgiving coming up. Usually there's that cutoff point of if you're not even close to the playoff line by American Thanksgiving, you're pretty much not going to make it unless there's a miracle. So it's
yeah.
definitely do or die for the Sens at this point. We'll see if they do or die on Saturday against the Bruins. That'll do it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching or listening, everyone. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like on the video, share around to your friends, and have a good night.